I would first like to give the mic to all three speakers. I think we have an interesting mix of a first-generation entrepreneur, third-generation entrepreneur, and a second-generation entrepreneur. So we'd first like to ask each one of them about their stories, how the company was incepted, and how they got started. First, I would like to hand it over to Aradhna.
So to tell you my story, I come from a very traditional Marwadi family. We're four sisters. We're four because traditionally the parents wanted a son, and I'm in some ways glad that we didn't have the brother that they much wanted, else I wouldn't have been on this dais. In the absence of a male child, our parents gave their four daughters all that they had, but with the firm intent that the objective for a woman is to get married and carry on with her family life. But life had it otherwise, and I graduated from the University of Michigan Business School. I got a job over here with Accenture for a couple of years. And then, having been brought up in an entrepreneurial family, it was hard to stay away. And the rest, as they say, is history. We were in the right place at the right time. Me and my sister actually started this business. It was funded by my father. With a lot of reservation and hesitation, and he funded it thinking it's a pastime that the girls want to do to keep themselves busy. They're running a school because education and women, everybody thinks it's a play school that you're running. So for the first couple of years, he had no idea what he was investing in. Today, I'm happy to say we have 40 centers pan-India. We are, and in Nepal, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, we're the master franchise of the Princeton Review. We're the largest operations outside India. In some of the product lines, our revenue is greater than that of the US itself. We won their Best Franchisee Award for 3 years in a row, and there's nothing holding us back. So that's sort of the humble growth story.
Thanks. Thanks. Over to you, Sandhya.
I share a very similar story than what Aradhna does. I typically also come from a very, very typical Punjabi family. And the reason why I'm here is I'm very adamant and very stubborn in a lot of things. And when somebody tells me not to do something, I have to do that. So my father told me that I shouldn't work, I shouldn't get into a job. So I had to do a job. He apparently wanted me to get married as soon as I graduated. I didn't want to get married. So he said, fine, then lose the job and start working with me, because as a business family, it's out of your stature if you're doing a job. And luxury industry was very new when I started working. So he didn't understand that either. So because I didn't want to get married, I joined the family business. And when I reached there, I felt like a misfit, because there were 70-odd men who would look at me and feel that she's a London-returned spoiled daughter who's going to eventually either make something wrong for herself or spoil our working out here. So then they ensured that I couldn't achieve or couldn't do much out there. And more than an entrepreneur, I became like a stock boy in that shop. So and so my dad enjoyed that. He really wanted me to go up to him and tell him, Dad, I'm done. I don't want to work. I really want to get married. But that was not what was meant for, and it didn't. I mean, what I wanted to do eventually made way. And one day I got a call, and my manager apparently transferred that call to me, and he said, Madam, phone hai aapke liye, aap baat kariye. So I took the call, and the girl on the other line said, hi, is that Sandhya? I said, yeah. She said, hi, ma'am, I'm calling from Yash Raj Films. So I said, hi, I'm Amitabh Bachchan, and I hung up on that woman. When nothing is going right, you don't really believe that what's happening is actually right. So while I was thinking that everything was going wrong, the baby steps that I was taking was actually being noticed by somebody. And she called again and she said, I'm not joking, ma'am, I'm calling from Yash Raj Films. So I said, great, if you're calling from Yash Raj Films, damn it, send me an email and I will respond to you. 3 weeks later, I was sitting across Mr. Aditya Chopra, and he understood what I was wanting to do, and he said, let's collaborate. And the way things happened then was actually like, no, it wasn't really easy. It wasn't a cakewalk. My dad thought I wanted to get into film industry. So I had a couple of abuses that I had to listen to, which I really can't speak in front of all you guys. And he said, damn it, this is all bullshit that you're trying to do. And one fine morning, I gave him a budget of 10.5 crores. And I said, that's what I want from you. And he looked back at me and he said, you've definitely lost it. But I think what it took was 365 days of working, where I don't think that I would have worked less than 18 hours a day to convince him that this business plan was worth it, to make sure that there is another way you need to look at the Indian ethnic wear industry. And the speaker who introduced me right now, I am not the director for Karol Bagh Saree House. I am the director for KBSH Private Limited. Karol Bagh Saree House is a brand that my father runs. And he is the director of Karol Bagh Saree House. I run a venture with Adi called Divani, which is India's first cinema-inspired fashion brand, which is my baby, of course supported and funded by my father. But the vision to break the stereotype came from here, came from a very, very typical Punjabi girl who actually never wanted to do anything. But I think in a course of a time, you don't really know what's going to happen for you. And this happened for me. So I think, yeah, that's about it.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone. My father started this company 2 decades back, where there was a lot of milk oversupply. So my father took this as an opportunity, and we started into bulk trading of milk. So we used to buy bulk milk from the farmers and sell it to the companies. And he has this kida of, okay, let's do something bigger. So we got 2 brands, that is Govardhan and Go Cheese. So Govardhan was for traditional products like ghee, butter, cheese, and Go Cheese is for cheese and Western products like cheese spreads and slices and yogurts. I always wanted to come into my family business because FMCG products always attracted me. I went into the office for the first day. It was clueless. I was totally clueless. What is happening? What is milk? How is it coming? How is the supply? So I was like, okay, let me do my master's and come back. So meanwhile, when I was doing my master's, I got an idea of doing something with the same product, but doing something better. So I started my own premium brand that is called Pride of Cows. So we sell premium dairy products to different houses in Bombay and Pune. We sell premium products, like a normal milk will cost you 40 rupees a liter, normal cow milk. And we sell Pride of Cows for 80 rupees a liter. So almost double the price. So there were a lot of challenges which were faced initially. But it's been 3 years that I've established this brand, and I've been working on it.
So talking about the challenges all of you have faced, Aradhana, first I would like to ask you how difficult it was to start an education business from the ground.
So, in our 12-year journey, I have to say that there were more than a few times when we were ready to sell if there would have been a buyer. But I'm so glad that there wasn't a buyer, because today we are turning away people who want to invest in our business because we don't need their money, we are not ready to dilute, and we have a very robust plan to sort of triple our revenue from where we are in the next 3 years, and we're on that path. There were a huge number of travels, external and internal. Since this is a women's entrepreneurship panel, of course, being a woman has several challenges. I have 2 children, one is 7, one is 2. Juggling all of it together is never easy. And I always tell everybody the 3 constants in my life are termites, a sick child, and then of course the positive disposition, which sort of keeps me afloat and helps me survive. My only hope is that, you know, a few years from now, when we're back at this entrepreneurship conference, there's not going to be a separate session on women entrepreneurship. There are just going to be leaders in this world, and there aren't going to be separate focuses and emphases on women leaders. There are all kinds of challenges for all of us. The genre of the typical Indian male is also changing. I see several men having to make choices, several men finding it difficult to balance the work-life, the classic work-life struggle that always exists, finding time to spend with the family. So, you know, I wouldn't want to put it any differently. I think if the grit and determination is there, and you're a little bit spiritual, so that you believe in a higher power, which is way greater than any of us mortals on this earth, then the rest is all, it's all easy.
Coming to you, Sanya, you're young and you are the youngest among all your sisters, but you played an iconic role. So how did this came about?
See, I told you, I am very stubborn. I always want it my way. So, yes, and ironically, my eldest sister is 18 years elder to me. She is not 2 or 3 years elder to me. She's 18 years elder to me. So, of course, it was very difficult to buy in everybody's vision in what you are thinking. You know, it's very easy to disconnect with family and say, I want to go my way. But it's very difficult to actually buy what they're saying, buy in their vision into your vision and move together. And I think coming from a very knitted family, that was one thing that I didn't want to lose on to. I didn't want to walk this path alone. I of course started this all by myself, but my biggest challenge was that eventually my father is proud of what I'm doing. Eventually, my sisters look up to what I'm doing, because of course, there is no son in the family. So there was a mockery, you know, which is that who is the heir now, you know? Who's going to take over? Nobody. There's actually nobody. And that fear, you know, that one day Karol Bagh Sari House will get shut and the daughters are settled and they are done, that legacy would die, is something that I wanted to take away, you know. So I think for me, doing Diwani is actually somewhere fulfilling the aspiration that my father doesn't talk about. And I know that he loves me for what I'm doing. He will never, I mean, he's never going to come and say that, wow, I'm really proud of you. But for me, doing Diwani is actually taking forward the Dheer legacy. I don't want that legacy to ever die off. So yeah, that's the thing. And coming to challenges, of course, buying into visions of people and buying into their faith in your vision is very, very difficult. Plus, we come from a very, the ethnic wear industry is very, very unorganized. So the challenges start at the ground level, because no worker today in this industry is committed. Primarily because the payoff to a typical worker in this industry is so low that they are ready to change their jobs for $100. So I think that has been my biggest challenge, to ensure that the workers are given not just money, but an overall support system wherein there is a vocational training, because our legacy, our craftsmanship is actually dying out. We face these challenges because one thing that I wanted was that Diwani should be all about taking Indian fashion global. But if we lose out to our craftsmen, we will die. We cannot work without them, specifically because our aim is to promote handcraft. So there, you really need to support them. And their support system begins from the point where they feel that if they're educated, it is good for them. But they fear that, you know, majorly what happens is that people don't provide education to their children in the craft industry, feeling that if their child is educated, the child will not get into that business, will not get into that art and craft, or maybe the weaving or the karigari. So that was one thing that we've really looked into and ensured that we support our craftsmen, and there are today about 500 of them that we are supporting, and we are educating them. We have about 150 women who are employed in terms of our craftswomen, and we look after their vocational training, to supporting them to getting married, to also being the main breadwinner in the family. So yeah, I think that has been my core challenge, that the craft person needs to get educated to ensure that you go forward.
Great. That's truly worth it.